Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the March 2025 lecture here at the Horological Society of New York. My name is Nicholas Manousis. I am the executive director here, and I'm really happy to see such a big crowd coming out on such a freezing cold night. So thank you for making the trek to Midtown tonight. I hope you enjoy the lecture. So let's get on with a few announcements as usual. A quick education update. We've got a full month of classes upstairs here in our classroom on the 5th floor of the General Society building. Horology 101, 102, and 104, and then two weekend classes. And this is something new, something that we just added today. We're going to be teaching a class on fine finishing. So polishing, bluing, tempering, all that good stuff, all that stuff that makes watches look spectacular, extraordinary, and nice. So check it out. It's on our website now, and we're taking reservations for the first ever fine finishing class. We'll also have our traveling education classes visiting Washington, D.C., and Charlotte, North Carolina, and Boston. So if you have any friends in those cities, please let them know that we are coming their way soon. And, of course, it's about that time of year for our charity auction, our annual charity auction, which is held at our annual gala. This year is being hosted by Christie's, and we have 10 extraordinary lots. I'm not going to go into detail on all of them, but you can get some sneak peeks about what they are by looking at these 10 photos up on the big screen. Of course, we've got a private dinner with Chef Nakazawa, an omakase sushi dinner donated by Grand Seiko. We have an F.P. Journe wall clock donated by F.P. Journe. We have a private dinner with the man himself, Jean-Claude Bivet. And the list goes on and on. So I encourage you to check this out on our website and to attend the gala and bid on these items. But if you're not attending the gala, it's okay. We're accepting absentee bids. So please just send an email and we'll get that sorted out for you. So that's I guess that's a good segue. Of course, our big anniversary gala, 159 years, that's a long time. And our birthday is coming up Saturday, March 22nd, 2025, that's a typo. But we're going to be at the Plaza Hotel on the corner of Central Park South and Fifth Avenue. So come and have a good time. We have just a few tickets left, so if you wanna join us and put on your best black tie attire, you're very welcome to do so. So check that out on our website as well. We have a new exhibit that is on upstairs. It's Early American Pocket Watches. It's on for the entire year. The catalog is extraordinary, and I encourage everyone to go check out the exhibit. It's open Monday through Friday, business hours, and we have the catalog here for sale tonight. It's in the back with Carolina, so check it out. Really highly recommended. Okay, on to the main event. There's something that's just this inescapable truth when it comes to watches and collecting them, that they're not always easy to get, right? If you have a watch that you're looking at, maybe it's a popular watch, and you can't just walk into a boutique and buy that watch. Maybe there's some hoops you have to jump through. We all know that, right? We know that as watch collectors, but why does that happen? Why is that happening? And from the perspective of a retailer, why does that happen as well? And that's really what we're going to look at tonight. And so I'm really happy for tonight because we have someone who I've known for a long time. I remember the very first HSNY meetings I started going to over 10 years ago. Yoni was there, and now he's here tonight giving a lecture. I just think it's pretty cool. So please join me in welcoming the head of watches at Material Goods, Mr. Yoni Ben-Yehuda.
I sort of feel like the kid who was listening to the band growing up, and then the band asks him to be a part of it. So I am so excited and so nervous to be here today. So really, really thank you for this. This means a lot to me. So I want to start, we had to call this a lecture. It's not a lecture. It's a conversation. And, I certainly want to hear everyone's thoughts as we're discussing some topics, and I have some questions for you. So I want to start off with one, really to set the tone. So who here works in the watch industry? Raise your hand. Okay. Some sheepish hands going up, I see. I think this is a safe space. We'll see. Who here is a watch collector or enthusiast? Raise your hand. Oh, so really interesting. A lot of the people who also work in the space are collectors. Out of curiosity, who here is a watchmaker? Raise your hand. These are the real stars of the show are the watchmakers in the room. So we want to really start by asking, and this is to all of you, so yell it out as you think it. What is a hot watch? So what are some models that are today considered hot watches? Royal Oak. What else? Daytona. What else? Nautilus. What else? Keep going. Swatch Omega. What else? Vacheron 222. Well, yes, that's certainly on there. We're going to have to wait a few more slides for it, certainly. Would you say the Crash is a hot watch? Yeah? What about an RM? Interesting. I would say the Longa Lumen is a hot watch. We agree? Okay. The new Piaget Polo, I would say certainly is a hot watch. And then you said the Vacheron 222. This is such a new deck that we could even show the new one. So I really agree with you, and I think it's important that we kind of level set on what we're defining as hot watches. Are these the only hot watches? Say it with your chest. Absolutely not. But these are some examples that come to mind when thinking of hot watches as defined for this conversation. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we got here. So it's important to note that I'm looking at this conversation through the Western lens. So this is different if this presentation was being done in different parts of the world. I'm also looking at this conversation from kind of the modern point of view. So again, show of hands, who here has been collecting before or around the year 2000? So not a lot of people, but some people. What about 2010? Okay. 2015? Okay. 2020? So really kind of a mixed bag for all of us. So in the year 2000, this presentation would have been completely different. So we're really going to look at it from this kind of modern era. And when trying to figure out when this really starts, the first place that we want to look at is the year 2016. So a few things happen in the year 2016. The first is Rolex releases its steel Panda Daytona with a ceramic bezel. We said this was a hot watch? I remember this was like one of the first two watches that people yelled out. I remember one of my memories is seeing that article from Hodinkee with Ben and John going to buy this watch and looking at it and being like, wow, this is quite an amazing watch. And then in 2016, AP also introduces the 15407 ST. So this is a 41 millimeter open work watch introduced at the SIHH in 2016. Very interestingly, the year before, the model was called 15305 ST, and it was 15305 OR, which was the rose version on strap. Those watches were selling below list. When this watch came out in 2016, it was selling in the beginning below list. You could walk into an AP boutique and buy a jumbo, a 15202 ST at the time, at retail. If you had a friend, maybe slightly below retail. Now, that's crazy for a lot of us who started collecting past 2015. The same year, Instagram switches its algorithm from chronological to engagement-based. Now, this might seem like a little innocuous detail, but I believe that it's not, and hopefully I'll show you that as we go along. The same year, 2016, Webster's dictionary introduces FOMO as a term into the vocabulary. I've always wanted to say that. My whole life I've wanted to say coincidence, I think not. So thank you for allowing me to do that. But you're starting to get the picture of the kind of tectonic shift that's happening in 2016 in the watch world. Then in 2017, the Rolex Daytona Paul Newman sells for $17.8 million. And I think while that is an amazing feat, the other feat that is equally worth noting is that the articles about this watch, before the watch came out, the auction and the result of this watch generated more than 1 billion unique clicks. Now, think about our space. You're seeing like our community represented in one room. So 1 billion unique clicks is a huge thing in our world and really beyond. 2017, AP introduces the ceramic Royal Oak. If it's okay with you, I'll share an anecdote about this watch. So we were at the SIHH when this watch came out, and it was the talk of the SIHH at the time. My phone was blowing up the day this watch came out. People that I hadn't spoken to in years were texting me, and my favorite is I got a text from someone I hadn't spoken to in, 7 years, and the text said, "Hey, how are you? How's your family? How's your kids?" And I just responded, "I can't get you the ceramic Royal Oak." And he just responded 2 seconds later, "I bet, thank you." So I remember this as being really kind of another one of those points of delineation. Another one that comes to mind is the 5968A, when Patek really starts to introduce a little bit more color, a little bit more sportiness, a little bit more youth into the Aquanaut line, which you could argue when it first came out was designed to appeal to a younger audience. But certainly adding this color is very un-Patek, I would say, at the time. 2019, Cartier reissues the Crash, the London edition. So they release one of these watches every month to VIP clients, starting in 2019, before they discontinue it a few years later. Again, in 2019, FP Journe, I'm just giving you a couple examples. There's a million more, but I really kind of want to set the stage for us. In 2019, FP Journe introduces the Elegante for men. Now, this was a watch that came out in 40 and 48 millimeters in the Titellite, which is the darker metal, and in the titanium. And at the time, this watch was, obviously very sought after and kind of interesting, but now it has become a whole different monster. This is considered one of the more hot watches today, seeing a premium of 3x retail, and also is really kind of an amazing timepiece in its own right, which you could do an actually interesting talk about with you guys. Now, 2020, something happens. If you remember COVID, I had a friend who bet me that I couldn't work a pug into the deck. So I was able to do that, and now I get a free dinner. So please, I thank you for allowing me to do that. But essentially, what happens is COVID, we all started staying at home, and then people who weren't a part of our world were all staying at home, and they had much more disposable income. If a person of means was spending $15,000 or $20,000 a month on their life, and they stayed at home for 3 months, suddenly they had 60 or 70 or 80 or 100 or whatever it is in their bank account, and they started to look at different asset classes. And with all of those things, the attention into our world grew like hockey stick exponentially. And it created kind of a weird moment in collecting. Because this is not how watch collecting was for many of us. And frankly, a lot of us probably feel that this is how watch collecting should not be today, which is what we're here talking about. I see a lot of people kind of nodding, and that makes me feel that I think we're hitting on something that's important. Now, In 2021, well, this actually doesn't happen in 2021, but this is something that I kind of want to bring to your attention. Anyone here know what homophily is? You're raising your hand. My brother's raising his hand because he taught me what it was. So anyone except for you know what it is? So homophily is a really interesting idea. It essentially suggests that we surround ourselves with like-minded people that echo a lot of our own beliefs. So the people around us create a mirror for ourselves, and we surround ourselves with them because we see ourselves in them, and they are like-minded friends. Now, imagine that for a second in terms of social media. The way homophily sort of works in social media is, I'll give you an example. If the US has two main political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. If I belong to one of those parties and I consume a lot of political content, when I go into social media, I see a lot of that content, and that kind of reaffirms my own beliefs. And it creates an echo chamber of belief where I end up saying, oh, when I leave Instagram, I say to myself, everyone believes what it is that I believe. Now, let's apply that same idea to watches for a second. If we're consuming this content and we're seeing the same things over and over again, let's use actual practical examples. So if we go on Instagram and we see Mike Nouveau talking about the Cartier crash. Now, if you don't follow Mike Nouveau, you should immediately. He is an awesome watch person. He works on the dealer side of the business, but gives a really honest and unique perspective. A big shout out to Mike. And people will consume this content. Then we will see people of influence wearing the Cartier crash. We'll see it in articles, we'll see it on social media, we'll see it kind of in this echo chamber that we're talking about. Then auctions play a very important role in this. The reason is, auctions are really the only place where we can publicly see what an object, especially in the watch world, sells for. So we can see what the brands list them for, we can see what secondary market dealers list them for, but we don't see what they actually sell for. So the auctions allow us to see that. So Philips sells a Cartier from Paris from 1991 for $270,000. Also sells a London one, an earlier edition from 1967, for $678,000. And then Loop This sells one of the original ones with JC on the back, which we believe stands for Jacques Cartier. I'm sorry for the terrible pronunciation. For $1.5 million. And so suddenly what we have is we have this kind of echo chamber of ideas. So if we are consuming this content in any form, what we are left with is not only this is a hot watch, but some of us feel like we have to have it. Inversely, some of us feel like we want nothing to do with it because it's been overproduced. So how many of us in the room looking at this feel like the Cartier crash has been overproduced and there's way too many of them? Raise your hand. Okay, so a very smart audience. I kind of was hoping that more of you would raise your hand, but here we are. Essentially, there are very few of these watches, but since you guys all know this, if you're consuming this content and don't know this, you think that this watch is much more ubiquitous than it is. And then you go and you try to buy it. And then you see, wait a minute, why does a watch that retails for $40,000 sell for $270,000, $600,000, or $1.5 million? And it's because of this. Now, a little moment, we were speaking about the great Jean-Claude Biver. Now, I think the reason you guys are here is because you want to talk about the do's and the don'ts of creating a relationship with boutiques and retailers and partners. So I'm going to start by talking about the do's of building a relationship with a boutique, either a new relationship or an existing one. And then I'm going to get into the don'ts, and I'm going to get into something else. So this might seem very obvious, but when we dig into it a little bit, we see that these things are a lot less obvious than we think. So the first thing that you want to do when starting a relationship is show up. Go and meet the people, talk to them, start building a relationship. This is a two-way street, and this is a real relationship. I promise these things get a little more spicy as we look at them. But some of these things people really forget. Now, be open-minded to new things. This is important because we have kind of our opinions, and then we have the information that we're getting fed on social media like we just saw. So it's very hard for us as collectors, even though this group is more sophisticated, to kind of form our own opinions because we're bombarded with the same ideas over and over again. So now, when we get a new watch, actually, I'm gonna test you guys. Let's see how honest you are. I'm being honest. I want you guys to be honest. When you see a new watch on social media or Houdinki or an article or wherever you consume your information, how many of you say to yourself or in comments, I like it, I don't like it? Raise your hand. Let's see it. Be honest. Let's hear it. Okay. What I want to challenge you is to take a moment to realize that you're looking at a two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional, very nuanced object, and these quick ideas and opinions that we form of something, I like it, I don't like it, doesn't justify the object in which we are looking. I think that as watch people, we can raise the discourse, both that we have in boutiques and, frankly, on social media, from meh, yes, no, I want it, I don't want it. Because these things, these tiny little handmade objects, they're millimeter-sized objects. You know, a movement is sometimes 4.1 millimeters thick, and it is a huge advancement in technology that someone spent 5 years doing, and we look at the image and go, not for me. And that's okay. You don't have to buy it. But I'm suggesting that be open-minded to having deeper conversations than I like it, I don't like it. See the thing, touch the thing, and then have an opinion about it. This is a very tactile disease that we have, this watch collecting. And I think that people forget that part of the relationship, especially the way we consume information and the way it's fed to us. Another one is be transparent about your watch collecting journey. If you had good experiences, if you had bad experiences, share them. Do it in a way that's a little bit more sophisticated than bad-mouthing, and we'll get into that in a little bit of the don'ts, spoiler. But be transparent about what has and hasn't worked for you. So many people will say to me, I'm a Rolex guy, I'm a Patek guy, I'm an AP guy. And I want to say to them, hey, let's look at some other stuff, and when they explain what they mean, essentially what comes out is, in this day of age, I've had a good experience at Rolex, at Patek, at AP. And if I had a good experience elsewhere, I would be looking at other brands. Another one, this is a really, really big one. And I think this is probably going to be in the Q&A later that you guys are going to ask about. But collect across the breadth of the collection. This is a hard one. This is a tricky one. Because on one side, you want what you want. And that's okay. But if you want what you want and everyone wants the same thing, how are the retailers, how are the sales associate, how are the brands supposed to decide how to allocate these limited watches? I'm going to share a little quick story with you here. This week, one of our favorite watch brands released new watches, or I guess last Tuesday. And it was big news in our world, and a ton of people wrote about it, and a ton of people spoke about it. I got 1,398 messages about those new releases. Of those, 1,352 were about the same two watches. Of those watches, of the 1,352, 2 people will get those watches. Now, I am one person. In here, you have a bunch of watch industry people who have had the same experience or more. So understanding this kind of place is important because it allows you to really look at the timepieces across the breadth of the collection. Are you an AP collector if you only buy 39 millimeter Royal Oaks? Now, the answer may be yes, and if you guys say yes, I'm happy to discuss that. But are you different than an AP collector who buys Royal Oaks and codes and offshores and concepts and complications? So I'm curious your thoughts on that kind of idea and question. The next is, this is kind of an obvious one, but you forget it. The more we know, the more we can help you. So we have to advocate on your behalf when we're working on allocating watches for people. That may be not the way that the business is going to be in 5 or 10 years, and maybe the dichotomy of power will shift, and maybe it should shift. But as it stands now, the more we know about you, the more we can help you. And that's why it's important to form a real relationship, a two-way, honest relationship. This seems silly, but man, it goes such a long way to be just a nice person. And you sort of forget it. You know, we were talking about this beforehand, because when you're spending huge amounts of money, sometimes you feel like you have unfettered access to a person, to a brand, to a thing. But at the end of the day, everyone on the watch business side, they're just people. And if you bully them and beat them up, they're not going to want to help you. Now, we'll see how this flips a little bit on the don'ts, but another very important one is, if you had a good experience, refer a friend. It goes a long way to build a network when you're bringing people in and creating sort of this mini community of collectors. Conversely, a good experience does not mean leaving with a watch. It's very important, and by the way, this cuts both ways, but it's very important that you know that if the only way you can define a good experience is if I walk in there and I got the product, how is that different from the I like it, I don't like it, I want it, feed me, consume mentality that really doesn't coalesce with watch collecting? You know, these are forever objects in a disposable world. And sometimes, you know, having that patience and being kind and knowing those experiences matter. This is one that a lot of people forget. When you go to a different boutique, when you're traveling anywhere in the world, tell the people that you meet who you work with. That's such a big thing for the sales associate, the manager, the other people that you work with back home, because we all talk to one another, and then we get notifications saying, hey, so-and-so came into the boutique. He said that he works with you. He said that he's looking at this watch. I gave him coffee. I showed him some stuff. It was a great experience. It's very different than not sharing this information, and that kind of leads into this, which is, I think, another one that we forget, is the watch industry is a small place. Everyone knows everyone, for good and for bad. So just please, please, please remember that. All right, now we're going to get a little bit more spicy. We're going to get into what not to do. I have a feeling we were joking that you guys would throw eggs at me, but they're too expensive, I think, now. So I think I'm safe for a little bit. All right, the first one is don't be a jerk. I'd use a different word, but this place has been around since the 1800s, and I want to be nice. But people really forget this. Just don't be mean. Don't be a jerk. This is another one that I think is important, is really comparison is the thief of joy. But how it applies here is, if you are bringing people and you're working in a community or know other people, when you come up to people that work at the boutiques and say, my friend just got this, he got this, how did he get this? The first thing is, most sales associates can't really speak to what other people received or didn't receive. And the other thing is, you're creating this kind of culture of comparing what they got. You don't know what else is in their collection. You don't know what else is going on. Don't compare your collection to your friends when speaking to the boutique level. These are, okay. This is a really interesting one. We went back and forth a lot on how to position this one, and I think we kind of landed on, just to be honest with you guys, don't lie. So many, I have been guilty of this as a collector as well. If you buy a watch and sell a watch, it's your property. You can do with it what you want, but just be honest. The sales associate, the directors, the managers, they are all trying to advocate on your behalf to get more stuff. So if you sell a watch, and they're fighting to get you this new release that they know you're going to love. And then when they do it, they speak to their manager and on and on. And then they found out you sold a watch. What are they going to do? They're stuck. They can't help you any further. So my advice is don't lie. And I'll share with you, again, a personal story. I traded a watch with a friend from the same brand, not to sell. You wear mine for 6 months. I'll wear a foreign exchange policy with someone. I wear yours for 6 months. He then went and sold the watch, which sucked. And then I had to go and tell the boutique that this happened. They never gave me a watch again, but I was honest. And I felt much better about that than me waiting a year or two and the watch coming back into service and then me being like, oh yeah, I did that. So again, it's your property. And if you disagree with this, we can talk about it certainly in the Q&A. But being honest in this way allows the people to really advocate for your behalf and to be transparent and really help you. Another one, and this goes back to the one we were talking about before, is don't pit boutiques against one another. If you go to one boutique and say, hey, I'm going to work with you, this other boutique didn't give me the thing, then you're kind of pulling the same brand against each other, and you're creating not the best environment for the people that are trying to help you. This is one that I think a lot of us forget. Don't badmouth other brands, especially not publicly. People read things. People see things. People who work for brands are humans, and they go on the same websites that you do. If you recall, when I started this, the first thing I said is, who here is in the industry? You got like 30 people. Who here collects? Everyone else raised their hand. So everyone talks, and it's very important that you remember that. When you're new to a boutique, this is a big one. Don't talk about watches as an investment the first moment you come in. That is a red flag for a lot of people working at the boutique. On the same note, don't walk in and talk about the secondary market right away. It's not that you can't talk about this stuff. We talk about it all day long with our clients. But it shouldn't be the first thing you talk about, because the second someone hears that, they say, oh, that's an interesting kind of thing that they're talking about. Why are they mentioning selling their watches? I think a lot of us are also guilty of this. Don't believe everything that you read or see on social media and in the forums. It's very unfortunate that the brands can't have a dialogue in these forums, because I promise you there is another side to so many of the stories that you read. And there's so many times where we're sitting there being like, oh, I wish we could just show the text that he's talking about. But we can't, and we won't. But really, take with a grain of salt everything that you read and see when it comes to this world. This is, I think, an important one, which is don't come in hot. I know it seems obvious, but if you had a bad experience, if you read somewhere else that someone got something on their first try, etc., you want to come in and say, hey, I've been dealing with you for so many years. You promised me this thing. Don't come in hot. Don't be aggressive. Remember, again, these are just people. Now, I want to go to my last slide before we go into a Q&A. I thought, if I'm talking about a relationship has to go both ways. And it shouldn't just be a conversation about what the collector can do or not do. It has to be a conversation about what the industry on the retail side should do and not do. I may get in trouble for some of these, but I think it's important. I think if we're going to have an honest conversation, let's have an honest conversation. So this is more to the industry folks in the room and to us collectors who have not had great experiences always. The first is, you got to remember who's who. So many times we say to our teams, you're asking someone to send a $250,000 wire for you, and you're telling them they have 2 hours to do it. When was the last time you effing did that? When was the last time you sent a $250,000 wire and did it in 2 hours? And then we treat people like we're doing them a favor? That is a terrible experience, and that is something the industry has to change. And the reason is human decency, but beyond human decency, the reason is that styles are cyclical. What is hot today may not be hot tomorrow. And we as the brands must remember that. It's so easy to get caught up, especially so many of us in this industry have started after the year 2000. So we have no idea what it was like in 2015 and 2014. When I bought my first Royal Oak, I walked into the boutique and they offered me a 10% discount. That doesn't exist anymore. So I think it's very important to remember that these styles, these hot watches, they're cyclical. They may not be hot tomorrow, and how we treat our clients will determine how much they come back to us later in the future. I think this is a important one, which is it's just find a way to say yes to something. And it doesn't have to be an allocation. Find a way to be positive. You know, we're inundated with, I used my example of the request for the new watches. We're inundated with those requests. It's so easy to be jaded. It's so easy to give in to the dark side and just say, no, I don't have it. No, you can't. And all of us, I think, in this room have had experiences like that as clients. And I think it's very important that we work very hard to not only find a way to say yes, but to lead with gratitude and just to be grateful that we're selling these objects that no one needs at crazy prices. And we have to remember that no one needs a $50,000 or $100,000 watch. So if you're not giving people a fucking good experience, what are you doing? And I think we really need to remember that. Be more transparent. It's funny, I get 50-50 on this, so if it's okay with you, I'm going to do another hand, raise your hand question. So raise your hand if you would like the sales associate managers, brands that you work with to be more transparent about things that you can't get. Oh, I'm going to forward this to the brands, I think. I feel the same way. I feel that I would rather someone say to me, hey, man, you're not getting this watch. I want to build with you for the future, but I'm getting 10 of them, and you're not one of the top 10 clients for this brand. Let's look at some other stuff. I think that would resonate with me as a collector, and I see you guys nodding because I think we all kind of agree that we've lost a little bit of this in collecting. And I think the last one is the brands need to remember that the sales associates and the boutique directors and assistant directors and operations people are the first line of the boots on the ground for whatever we do. So much money and energy is spent into R&D and creating these objects. And then so much money and energy is spent on marketing these products and rolling them out and producing them. And by the time it gets to the boutique, if we don't take care of the people on the ground, if we don't train them, if we don't support them the way we need to, then the clients will have a terrible experience. It doesn't matter how good our marketing is. It's meaningless. If we don't take care of our people the right way, they are the ones who are actually interacting, and we should also listen to them. So when they say, hey, I met with 10 clients and everyone said the watch was 2 X, Y, and Z, listen. It's not Bible, but listen to them. Okay, so that was my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we're going to do a Q&A. I'm going to take a sip of water.
Thank you, Yoni. That was incredible. That was an incredible lecture, and now we are ready for Q&A. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone to you. We'll start right here in the front.
Thank you very much for a nice lecture. Really straightforward, basic question. Do you think there's any replacement for spend and spend history?
Oh, that is not a straightforward question, my friend. That is an excellent question. Yes, I do. I think spend and spend history. Does everyone know what that means? Yes? Okay. I think spend and spend history are a very important part. But I think there are other things that matter, like longevity, like showing up, like being a decent person, and being a celebrity. No, just kidding. I'm so sorry. But I think those other things matter. But I also do think that spend and spend history matters. So we as brands can't measure who wants the watch the most. There's no metric for that. We can't measure who loves it the most. we can't also measure who deserves it the most. So we have to come up with these amorphous metrics, and some are quantitative and some are qualitative. And I think the quantitative ones matter. I think spend and spend history matters. It's not the only thing that matters. I think what you buy matters. That's the point of collecting across the breadth of the collection. If you buy 3 over-list hot watches at retail that equal $100,000, or 1 watch at $100,000 that's 50% below retail, that should mean something, right? It means that you love the thing for the thing. And that's not the only answer, but it's certainly a part of it. So an amazing question. I don't know if I answered it well enough, but certainly excellent. We can do this. I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts and questions.
We'll go over here to the left. Could you pass the mic down?
Yes. Hi, Eric.
What do you feel about the CPO market? AP tried to roll it out about 2017, 18, but decided not to because the market price of a pre-owned watch was too close to a new watch. So they held back doing it for a while, but they were the first to think about it. And now, obviously, when Rolex came out and everything's CPO, Cartier has their OPO, and Vacheron has it, Breitling has vintage, and whatever they want to call it. Everyone's got an acronym. Where do you see the longevity of CPO within the brands, in having within a multi-store boutique or within the actual home boutique?
Thank you. It's a great question. I think that there is a space for it. If you look at the sneaker world for a second, Nike is the #1 selling shoe in the world, and the #2 selling shoe in the world is Nike on the secondary market. So I think that there's something to learn from that system. I think that having the watches certified, because again, these watches are these closed objects, we don't know often what goes under the hood except for the few watchmakers here, that having some kind of authority is important. I think more transparency on the price is valuable. I think where the brands struggle is this moment of time that we're in the watch world. Whereas brands can't say in good consciousness, I can't sell you this watch for $10,000 because I don't have it, but I can sell it to you for $40,000. And I think, and inverse also, I can't sell you this watch for I can sell you this watch for $10,000, but I also have it for $5,000. So I think that CPO is a really important part, but I think some of the brands that do it the best also look at watches that are discontinued. So if you look at the FP Journe Patrimony program, they do a great job because they're only selling watches that you can't buy in their boutiques. With us, we also, because we're partners with so many brands, we try not to sell modern watches as well that are available at the boutiques because we don't feel comfortable having that. We don't think that conversation is a good experience for clients. So I think CPO programs are great. I just think that this is a strange moment in time to create them.
Hey, Yoni, thanks for the lecture. I have a question. Conversation, there we go. So I have a very pointed question.
Oh, boy.
It's weird.
Let's go.
But let's go for it.
Let's go.
Okay, I have a pretty great relationship with a retailer.
Okay.
I'll use the toxic term authorized dealer.
Okay.
I've created that in just the way your dues list prescribes.
So it's not bullshit.
Right.
Amazing.
It's fantastic. It's a great relationship. Any deal, we'll call it, we've made, I've arrived with a gift, whether it's for me or anybody in my family.
Oh, what a great question.
Okay, here it comes.
Do it. It's such a good question.
Last year, we came to know that a particular manufacturer of watches made a particularly interesting acquisition. So what does that mean for my relationship with this particular authorized dealer? And I'll tell you in advance, my gut instinct is to be loyal and double down on loyalty and care about the authorized dealer regardless of what the future might hold. So
Awesome. I thought you
There
were
we
also
are.
going to get into some of the bribery stuff, which I was
no,
excited
no, no,
about.
no. As a
No,
matter of
I'm
fact,
not suggesting that you do
funny,
that. But
no,
I thought you were going to ask about that.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because funny you mentioned.
This is my Venmo.
Yeah.
No, I'm fucking.
Funny. Funny you mentioned. It started innocently. It started innocently as, oh, okay, I get that this game is tiered and layered and laddered, so let me go in, the honest person that I am, and just give before you get value out. Yeah. And as a result, I oddly and weirdly probably walked up the ladder unbeknownst to me in a way that I never expected. But now we have a different reality going into Watches and Wonders April. So
Sure.
What do you
Awesome.
what do you have for that?
Thank you. I want to answer both of those questions to the best of my ability. The gifting and bribery, and again, not saying, but just to address that because I think it's important. And also, and if I understood this right, please, if your relationship you have is with a retailer and that retailer gets bought up by a big conglomerate, what do you do with the relationship? Is that the question? Sure. Right. Right. Okay. I'm gonna get shot by like the Rolex guard. No. I think the first point that I made solves that problem in the do's list, which is if you are going there and building a relationship, you're not building it with one person. Don't always try to go to the assistant director and the director, but build a relationship with the group of people who work there. Share your stories with them. While your sales associate is going to bring out the watch, talk to the bartender, talk to the other people, because you're creating sort of like a mini community for yourself. If one person leaves, if one person gets fired, you still have other people that you're creating a relationship with. In full transparency, to me, Rolex makes very few mistakes. I think it is one of the greatest watch brands on earth. And so I don't think that they didn't think this problem through. I think that, and Bucherer obviously is one of the great retailers in the world. So I think that the marriage of these two brands, which is, I think, an excellent one for the industry, and for all parties, I think will actually allow you to ingratiate yourself further with Rolex and Bucherer, because now you can use the term move up the ladder. My guess is when you were working with Bucherer, the Rolex relationships were sort of like a wall. Yes. No, please, we're talking. Yeah. So what is what should you switch to Bucherer is the question? You said double down on good. I think you double down on good. I think you continue to build with the other relationships. Bucherer, I don't think, is going to get in their 100 doors 1.2 million watches. So they're not going to close everyone. I don't think that they could sell all of those watches. I may be misspeaking because I don't know a lot about that infrastructure, but my hunch, based on being in this business for some time, is you can't sell 1.2 million watches through 100 points of sale, unless, even in no way. So I think by continuing with your retailer and saying to them, hey, I'm sticking with you because we built a relationship. I'm not going across the street because I want to continue our relationship. That means something. It will mean something. It seems like a relatively safe bet. If I'm wrong, you know where to find me. So can I answer the bribe and gift question? Is that okay? So we get asked this a lot. First, don't ever offer bribes. If you find someone who you're able to bribe, they will be found out quickly, and then you're left out in the cold.
We good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you already addressed this because I came kind of late. But what do you think is the psychology of a manufacturer raising MSRP prices when the secondary market prices are going down? I'm just curious if that's like a common practice. What is the psychology of a manufacturer raising MSRP when the prices on the secondary market have been going down? And there's a pretty significant depreciation.
Voice. I'm really happy I lost my voice for that question. That's a really good question. I don't know is the short answer. I think that we as the industry need to be mindful on raising our prices because it's easy to go up, it's very hard to go back down, and there is a tipping point. What we experienced in 2021, 2022, the beginning of 23 is not forever, as we're seeing. So I think part of it is materials. Gold is much more expensive than it ever was. There's a lot of supply chain issues in Switzerland. So the suppliers know this, so they're raising prices. And then the shippers raise prices, and then eventually it lands with the consumer. So I think some of the things are more expensive to make, and I think some of them are just incorrectly raising prices. But I do think that there is a tipping point to that. Excellent question. Next.
Thank you for this tremendous conversation. Really, really enlightening. I'm old enough to remember a time that you referenced earlier where you could go to a boutique and get discounts on Rolexes, some of the models that were not selling as well. My question is the toothpaste out of the tube? Is there ever going to be a time, in your opinion, where we'll see production outpace demand and we go back to a situation where you could walk into a boutique or a retailer and basically have your pick of watches that are available?
It's a bit of a double-edged sword question because on one hand, many of us, I don't know if the case for you, it's certainly the case for me, I didn't buy the hot watches when they were available to me. I only really started wanting them when they stopped being available to me. So I think part of it is us looking inward. The other part is there are so many great watch brands and watches within those brands that are under MSRP that people are not paying attention to. The point I was making about switching from saying I like it, I don't like it, is so that we can start developing a more sophisticated palette in the things that we like. Obviously, if you're in this room, you've already kind of passed that threshold, but it's very important that we start looking at these watches. If you look at AP, Vacheron, Patek, and Rolex, there are unbelievable watches from the 80s and 90s that are $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. They should be 3x that. But we're not looking at them. We're looking at the hot watches. And I'm not saying you, but as a cohort. So I think we need, the more we look outside the framework, the more exciting stuff we'll find. And that still exists. And also, I think that demand will certainly, or supply will certainly outweigh demand because there's fatigue. We get fatigued. We're being inundated with this content. So I believe that demand will outweigh supply, or the inverse, and we as brands need to make adjustments. Absolutely, I believe that. Excellent.
Thank you for this conversation. I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about how to vet sellers on the secondary market. So if people are interested in things that are no longer in production, because I feel like the secondary market is a topic that was on the outskirts of this conversation because you're primarily dealing with dealers. But if someone wants, let's say, a Milgauss, who do you go to? How do you vet the sellers of the Milgauss?
No, I'm kidding. Obviously, it's what we do. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of people in this room that do that. I think the meta version of this talk was that all you have to do to start getting watches is come to this talk, and you'll get to meet people that work in the industry. And you goes, but the truth is, and that goes a little bit to what Eric was saying, is you want to look at some certified pre-owned, more that the brands back them, but also you have to do your due diligence. You have to work with someone that you're comfortable with. There's a lot of very good secondary market people. You know, the gray market isn't filled with just, nefarious actors. There's a lot of very good, honest people in that realm. And, learning about them, you could go to any source that you want. Material good is certainly where I would go. But I think it's important that you kind of do your own research and know that there's a lot of great players in the space.
And what does that research look like? What signs are you looking for?
Oh man, good question. You want live pictures of products. You want to look to see that the product is in the country that you're in. You want to read reviews. If it's too good or too bad to be true, it is. If the Milgauss is, the average median price is 18,000 and someone's listing it for 12, they know something about the watch that you don't. If someone's listing it for 35, then they're trying to take you for a ride. So there's things that you can kind of do as you kind of suss out the information and look for, again, authorized sources, but also, are the pictures live? Are the are the pictures heavily edited? Are the pictures from 2 years ago? Have you seen them in 4 other sites? All of those things will help you. When they write about it, is there any poetry or pageantry in the writing? Is it straight business? Is it, this is the price, this is the product, this is the year? Is it romance about the Milgauss, about the Explorer? Those things I think matter.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, we'll go over here to Melody.
Hello.
Hi.
When you was mentioning about like how it works, you reminded me of something when you mentioned people of influence and auctions. And I remember when I attended the Christie's auction when Jackie Onassis' Cartier watch was sold.
To Kim Kardashian.
Yes,
Yeah, I
and
remember that.
the uproar it caused in that even though she had the money to buy it,
Sure.
it was like she's not deserving of it, and it was something that I felt was, it was just very interesting. So now we love the watches, yes, but now it's like to the point, it's like, but you don't deserve that watch. What are your thoughts on that?
Who are we to say what someone does and doesn't deserve? I think that goes back to the leading with gratitude. Kim Kardashian, in this particular case, who I don't know, never spoke to her, outbid every other person and thusly deserves that watch. I also thought that she brought a lot of really cool attention to that watch when she wore it. If that's if I grew up watching Steve McQueen, or for me, I'll give you a better example. I watched the Thomas Crown Affair, the 1999 version. I'm so sorry to the Steve McQueen lovers. I prefer the Pierce Brosnan. Everything someone clapped for that? That's amazing. I've pretended that I'm him, even though I'm the furthest thing from him, ever since 1999. The JLC Reverso was the watch he wore in that movie. I wanted that watch ever since. If that watch ever comes to auction, I am bidding on that. But if someone else outbids me, then they maybe deserve it more than me. So I don't think that we should pass judgment. This hobby is already so exclusive because of the price point. We as a community need to be more inclusive. We need to welcome more opinions, more diversity, more different perspectives, more new watchmakers. Remember, if we don't take care of this, the watchmaking is going to be a forgotten art in our lifetime. And so we really need to protect this, and the way to protect it is to ingratiate people into it. Kim Kardashian probably got more people into Cartier with wearing that watch than anything I've ever done, certainly. So I think that she certainly deserves it. Great question. All right, I got my voice back. Let's rock.
So I kind of wanted to go back to what we were talking about, kind of about reselling watches in a collection. And I was wondering how a brand like AP reconciles the messaging around wanting to have their collectors keep their watches, especially keeping like a registry where you can register the serials, but then also working with brands that sell on the secondary market these watches, like for example, Material Good or like Wrist Check with Austin Shoe, where
Good plug.
it seems, yeah, like a little bit backwards where you can see a 15510 green dial on Wrist Check, right, going for above retail, but then they directly partner with them. But then they're also saying, if you sell this watch within a year, we'll blacklist you, right? Like, and then I guess maybe from your aspect at Material Good too, right? Like, how do they want to represent this messaging to customers and clients?
Sure. I wish I didn't have my voice back. It is a hard question. It's a very important one, right? So let's say the quiet parts out loud a little bit. The first is, I am not speaking for AP tonight. I am speaking for Material Good. So I don't want to speak for a brand, though we are very lucky to be their partners. I don't want to speak as the authority of that. So I'm just giving you my point of view on the subject. Witnesses? Okay. Now, we don't have this figured out. This is an imperfect science. It is a new world where 3 years ago, 5 years ago, this didn't exist. So we don't have all the answers, and I don't think that we get it right all the time, both as the brand side and the collector side. And so I think what we look for is intent. Did you intend to buy the thing to profit off of it? And if you did, then I think that the brands in this moment of time shouldn't prioritize you. Now, it's your property, do with it as you wish, but the brands aren't in the business of making you money. Now, did you have the watch for a year, 2 years, whatever brand, whatever policy? Let's take it away from AP and speak more on a general level. And then did you go to your salesperson and they offered you the new blue dial of the watch, but you have the green dial. And you don't, we say this all the time. There's only so much money. There's only so much spots in the safe. There's only so much wrist time. No one can buy everything. So you say to your person, hey, I need to sell this in order to get that. This blue is my dream watch. It's my university color. I'm having a boy, blah, blah, blah. I want this. So it's our job then to communicate that to the brand. That's very different than someone who says, oh, I bought this watch a month ago and I can make 20 grand. I'm going to make 20 grand. So I think our job in this new world, which is still the wild, wild west for us, is to figure out the intent of the consumer. And the only way we can do that is if we have real relationships and conversations and transparency. Not a perfect answer, because I don't have a perfect answer to that question. I think it's an awesome question. I'll tell you what we do at MG. We try not to buy, so I'll speak now as MG, who is an AP partner currently. We try not to buy watches that are in the 2-year age range, and we try not to buy watches that are still currently in production. So we try to use the Journe philosophy, which is buying a timepiece that is discontinued, because then I don't feel bad saying, hey, I can sell you this watch. You can't get it new from AP. If you prefer this dial color, this iteration, this font, I can help you with that. That doesn't feel like, that doesn't have the tinge of, not cleanness to me. So I think that is the best way to do it as partners. I don't know, what do you think?
I appreciate the answer, first of all, yeah. I don't think there's like a perfect way to go about it, I guess. I understand from their perspective, you want to work with clients that can show that they're willing to collect pieces, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about a business making money, right?
Sure.
So I don't know, I don't think there's a perfect answer. I was just curious, what you thought because I think you're in a pretty unique position there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Do you think that this is the right mentality, though, as we discuss it here? Like looking for the intent, understanding, having the conversation, and then also not selling watches that are in production?
Yeah, personally, as a collector, my philosophy, the more I think about it, like I would want to purchase watches that I keep long term rather
Yeah.
than cycling. But I also understand people who like to go through a wide breadth and experience different watches. So I don't think there's like a right answer there too. I think it's pretty subjective.
Yeah.
I honestly just wanted to get your opinion. I don't think there's a right answer or anything like that.
I
I appreciate your perspective too, though.
And I
for
appreciate
sure,
the
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to do a few more? Yes. Are we down to do a few more? Yes. Okay. My brother.
How you doing? This is actually very insightful. In my line of work, I'm actually an art dealer, and a lot of my clients are collectors of timepieces as well. And one of the things they always ask me, which I'm not an expert in at all, is when you come across these kind of like collaborative things with artists and watch companies, like AP just re-released the Warhol watch, for example. It was a watch
Piaget.
yeah. And I want to know, how do those type of collaborations, do they hold up? Do they actually last the test of time? Because that's the type of advice we're trying to give our clients is what we feel like will last the test of time. And I don't think I'm educated enough about those type of collaborations in the watch world with visual artists.
Awesome. Really, these questions are so insightful. No one has a crystal ball. I will never tell a client, buy this because in 10 or 15 or 20 years it'll be worth more. You don't know. I think what you're looking for in the collaborations is actually a sense of two opposing ideas. One is, does it represent the moment in which it was created? So if the 90s or the 80s have a design language in your mind, if you close your eyes and picture 90s fashion, music, style, and then the object represents that, it'll have a cohort that sees nostalgia in that. And they'll want to go to that because that was what they saw as kids. And when they become wealthy, that is a part of their style that they'll want to replicate. If you look at the early 2000s, I couldn't close my eyes and tell you any kind of fashion from that time. What people wore, like there was nothing. If I tell you 70s, you would tell me bell bottoms. You would tell me, if I tell you mid-90s and you listen to music in America, you would tell me grunge or hip hop and the styles. So if the watch is rooted in the moment in which it was created, I think if it doesn't have the test of time, it certainly has a built-in audience. I think the inverse of that is if it is devoid of any time. So if it is a purely classic idea, like the Piaget Warhols, which is an awesome example, those watches, maybe there's some like Art Deco in the design and also some punk rock, but they are devoid of any moment of time. They are forever objects. I think if it checks one of those two boxes, it'll probably have legs. If it is something that is just a collaboration for the sake of a money grab, or I think long-term we as consumers see through that. Awesome. You want to do one more?
Should we go up here to the left? Last question.
Big responsibility, last question.
Thanks for doing this. The question that I have essentially is that I go to the AD, I try to establish a relationship. I'm sometimes successful, other times you can't have the watch, which leads me to the question, what percentage of the watch purchase community do you feel is actually in the flipper category? Because if I can't get a Pepsi for 2 years from Rolex AD, but you walk 3 blocks south from Vempi and you go into the Diamond District and you see 50 examples of it that are less than a year old and very many of them with tags on them. So it almost feels like it's not a level playing field and it's just a little bit of disingenuousness in the process, and I sort of, it's unattractive to me. What percentage do you think we have a live shot when you walk in as an individual consumer? Do you really feel that it's stacked against us?
Awesome. I don't know the percentage. I think if you walk into Rolex and you say to them, I want a steel Daytona, I only collect Daytonas, then you don't have a shot because you're probably not a Rolex collector. You're a Daytona collector. And that's awesome. And maybe there will be a time where those watches will be available. I wonder if you'll want them when they are, but maybe there will be a time. But if you go there and do some of the things that we talked about and actually show a genuine interest in learning about the brand and trying on new things and trying on the Cellini and looking at these things, not to lead them on and not to flip it, just a genuine curiosity, then I believe those other things will become available. If you walk into a boutique and say, I've been waiting 2 years for a Pepsi, I want a Pepsi, put my name down for a Pepsi. Why? And now, if you as a group say to me, well, F you, it doesn't matter why, I want the thing, I want to buy it, then go to 47th Street. But we need to know you in order to advocate for you, so that when a Pepsi comes in, we can say, you know, this gentleman with the green shirt that came in and tried on this and came by and we had coffee with him and he likes the Pepsi because his dad was a Pan Am pilot and blah, blah. That stuff matters. It really matters to contextualize it. So the percentage depends on the approach. Really, I think like everything in life. Can we still do this one thing for me? Yeah, okay, great. And there's one other thing I want to say as I finish. So it's very important. Can we please give this man a hand and thank Nicholas? We don't realize how lucky we are. Nicholas is a Royal Oak in 2015. We do not realize how lucky, thank you for, how lucky we are to have this person be the steward for our community. He's an amazing steward. He's an amazing champion of this industry. He's one of the people who is keeping alive this ridiculous hobby that brings us here on a 19-degree day. So I'm, as someone who's been coming here for 10 years, one more time, really thank you to you. Really.
Thank you. Thank you, Yoni. Thank you, everyone.